If you stop and think about it, being a kid's sidekick must suck, right? I mean, let's think about this for a moment. Even if we choose to ignore the blatant disregard of any child labor laws and obvious child endangerment, it just seems like a really sucky job. You have to put your life on the line every day against hardened criminals, serial killers, and God knows what else, while other kids your age are worried about what they're going to wear to the school dance or what they got on the English exam. The hours are shitty, you're likely not getting paid anything unless you work for someone who's rich, and you're probably not getting any benefits either. It's not even like you can put it on a resume, since most sidekicks have to keep their identity a secret. That just feels a bit exploitative, doesn't it? The concept of superheroes is absurd enough, but to imagine a child in that role is absolutely ludicrous. Plus, being a superhero is no walk in the park itself. Practically every hero I can think of has a tragic backstory where they've lost a loved one or they've gone through something completely awful in order to get their powers. Not to mention that most of them were children themselves when they went through these awful things. Most sane minded people would never want a child to go through something like that. Yet we have no problem reading about it or watching it. So, what does that say about the writers and artists of these comics that they keep putting kids in these scenarios? And furthermore, what does it say about us that we keep reading about them? We have to be honest with ourselves. One of the reasons why we love reading comics is because we subconsciously enjoy watching the hero suffer. There has to be some kind of conflict for these characters to overcome, otherwise, we wouldn't read about them. Well, this goes for sidekicks as well. In real life, we oppose any form of cruelty to children, but we have no problem reading about them in comics. I think there might be something to unpack there. This has always been an interesting topic to me, but up until recently, I never found any comics that actually explored any of these ideas. Sure, there are plenty of comics that deconstruct superheroes and even comic books themselves, like Watchmen or The Dark Knight Returns, but I never found anything that only looked at the sidekicks. There are some comics, like Russell Bretholtz's Sidekicked, that pokes fun at some comic tropes around sidekicks, but it doesn't really go any deeper than that. For a while, I thought I was maybe never going to find what I was looking for. That wasn't until I read the comic we're going to talk about today, Brat Pack. Brat Pack is a 5-issue miniseries written and illustrated by Rick Veitch. It's a dark comedy that pokes fun at some common sidekick tropes while also taking an in-depth look at the history of violence and exploitation in comics. Specifically, Brat Pack looks at the exploitative nature of kid sidekicks. For writer and artist Rick Veitch, Brat Pack came from a point in his life when he had a lot of anger and frustration from an industry he felt abused by. Veitch would see the peak of his career in the mid-80s when he took over as the head writer for Swamp Thing after Alan Moore left DC. Veitch originally pitched the idea of Brat Pack as a DC project, but after leaving the company in 1989 due to creative differences with Swamp Thing, Veitch published Brat Pack under his own publishing house. If you're into comics that have a violent edge to them, like Preacher, Invincible, The Authority, or even The Boys, then I think something like Brat Pack would be right up your alley. This is especially true if you're a fan of the Boys comics, or even the TV show, since Brat Pack can be considered to be a precursor of pretty much all of Garth Ennis's work. To be honest though, it's so much more than just a violent comic. Many people, including myself, consider Brat Pack to be the trifecta of comics that dissect the superhero genre. This is one of the most thought-provoking comic books I have ever read. Don't let the violence or the cynical overtones trick you. Veitch is a master writer. I, along with many others, consider this comic to be his crown jewel. I personally put Brat Pack on the same tier as The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. You might say it's a bold claim since Brat Pack is not nearly talked about as much as the other two, but I'm kind of hoping this video can change that. I really love this comic, and I am so grateful that I have the opportunity to share it with you all today. So, with everything else out of the way, let's finally get into Rick Veitch's Brat Pack. But first, a word from our sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Aura. As I'm sure many of you have been seeing in the news, hackers may have stolen the social security numbers of every American. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from National Public Data, which offers personal information to employers, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others doing background checks. These stolen records include a person's full name, address, date of birth, social security number, and phone number, along with alternate names and birth dates. And members of the hacker group have reportedly released this information for free online. I don't know about you, but seeing stuff like this happening more and more every day scares the hell out of me. It is way too easy for your entire life to get exposed just from the click of a button. If you weren't taking precautions with your personal information online before, this should be a huge wake-up call. You've never been more vulnerable online than you are right now. Luckily for me, I don't have to worry about my online security, because I use Aura. Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, email, or social security number on the dark web. They're going to let me know fast if anyone tries to use this information to access my credit or bank accounts. They also give me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. Aura also provides a bunch of other awesome features, like a VPN and parental controls. You can go to my link, aura.com/into-the-depths, to try 14 days for free. That'll be enough time for Aura to find if any of your personal data is exposed. I highly recommend you do this right now, because not only is national public data not going to do anything to help you, they probably aren't even going to face any repercussions for this leak. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches. And if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/into-the-depths to try 2 weeks for free. I'd like to once again thank Aura for sponsoring this video. Our story takes place in the fictional city of Slumberg, Pennsylvania. Upon first glance, Slumberg may appear as a dazzling metropolitan city with its stunning skyline views and breathtaking architecture. The longer you look, however, the city starts to show its true face. We listen to WSLM, the most popular radio show in the whole city, hosted by local Slumberg shock jock Neil Dennis.
Good evening, Slumberg. You're tuned into WSLM Listener Line, and we're tuned into you. We're here to discuss all the issues facing our fair city. The number here is 666-8200. I'm your host, Neil Dennis. I promise to go easy on you tonight, so don't be afraid to dial 666-8200. Caller number 1, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Oh, I wanted to say something, Neil. Something about the children.
This is radio, not a mind-reading act. You'll have to be more specific, mister. What's your name?
My name is a secret.
We don't want to expose any secret identities. But I need to call you something.
Well, I'm a doctor.
Fine, we'll call you Doc. And now that we've got your moniker, we can ask you the most important question of the evening. What's up, Doc? That's a joke. Doc, you there?
I want to talk about the children.
Of course you do, Doc. But we need to know which children. What are their names?
Well, there's Chippy and Kid Vicious. There's Wild Boy, and of course Luna.
Oh god, not those yo-yos.
Neil is not a very big fan of the Brat Pack. In fact, he despises them. He calls them an embarrassment on the city and says most people would rather see them dead. He decides to have a little fun with this idea and has his audience vote on whether the Brat Pack should live or die. And if they pick death, how should it get done?
So how about it, Slumberg? Do you want those insufferable kid sidekicks dead or alive? Call in and let us know.
Please, don't do this.
Just a harmless little poll, Doc. Thumbs up or thumbs down on the Brat Pack.
Please, don't.
And if we're going to croak 'em, how should we go about it?
Please, don't make me do this. Anyone who has even a casual interest in Batman comics will probably realize pretty quickly that this is a clear spoof of the time when DC let fans vote to kill off Jason Todd. Even the radio host, Neil Dennis, is a clear parody of Dennis O'Neil, who's the guy who came up with the idea to put Jason's fate up to a vote. When this happened, Rick Veitch was shocked that readers would actually vote to kill a kid sidekick. When he was conceptualizing Brat Pack, Veitch wanted to implement this into his story. Throughout the entire first issue, we see over a dozen fans call into the show, and one thing is made very clear. The citizens of Slumberg hate the Brat Pack. They see them as nothing more than a bunch of rowdy, immature, brats. They are loathed by the public. The Brat Pack is, of course, the de facto name for the group of superhero sidekicks that operate within Slumberg. There's Chippy, sidekick to the Midnight Mink, an openly gay and eccentric vigilante, and this universe's version of Batman. There's Luna, sidekick to the Moon Mistress, the Lunar Princess Warrior, and a clear analog to Wonder Woman. There's Wild Boy, sidekick to King Rad, a mixture of Green Arrow and Tony Stark. And then there's Kid Vicious, sidekick to Judge Jury, the unrelenting hammer of truth and justice, who's a mixture of Captain America, Judge Dredd, and the Punisher. Likewise, each Brat Pack member is based off an already established sidekick. Chippy is Robin, Luna is Wonder Girl, Kid Vicious is Bucky, and Wild Boy is Speedy. Together, these four heroes are known as Black October, the Guardians of Slumberg. There was actually a fifth member at one point, a maxi-mortal known as True Man, essentially this universe's version of Superman with a little bit of Captain Marvel mixed in. He was the leader of Black October, but he's been off planet for a couple of years now, leaving the fate of the city to his trusted colleagues. Next, we meet Father Dunn, head of St. Bingo's church, along with his faithful altar boy, Cody. Cody is a very ambitious young man. He's a good Samaritan who, in his spare time, likes to give back to his community. He likes following the rules, so much so that he turned his own parents into the police for smoking marijuana. Cody is a model citizen and a kind friend to all. But there's only one problem. You see, Cody has a dream, one he wouldn't dare share with anyone else. Cody wants to be a superhero, not just a good Samaritan or an everyday hero. No, Cody wants to be a full fledged superhero, like the ones he reads about in comic books. But how can he possibly make this happen? Cody doesn't have any powers, he certainly isn't rich, he's never even thrown a punch. It seems that Cody's dream might just be that, a dream. That is until his prayers are seemingly answered when Chippy stops by St. Bingo's to pay Father Dunn a visit. Chippy, who looks remarkably just like Cody, is distraught. Something is very wrong with him. He comes to seek help with Father Dunn. Dunn tells Cody to empty the donation baskets while he talks with Chippy privately. It's here when we learn something bad, something very, very bad, has been happening to Chippy. Chippy has been getting molested by his mentor, the Midnight Mink. The truth is, the members of Black October aren't heroes at all. They are sociopaths who torture and belittle their sidekicks for their own amusement. They're all terrible people with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. The Midnight Mink is a pedophile who picks his sidekick based on who he's the most attracted to. He's been molesting Chippy for a long time, but since Chippy's recently turned 18, things have only gotten worse. The Moon Mistress is a misandrist and sexual deviant who likes to castrate men and wear their severed little chippies around her belt. Judge Jury is a rampant xenophobe, racist, and a proud member of the KKK. If you'd like any further proof on the last part, his means of transportation is quite literally a burning cross. When talking about anyone who isn't white, Judge Jury will only refer to them in racial slurs. He is a steroid-abusing lunatic with a very short fuse. King Rad is an alcoholic and drug addict with no regard for human life. These poor excuses for humans are the farthest things from heroes you can find. They are all psychopaths who can care less about protecting Slumberg and its citizens. It wasn't always like this, however. When Truman was in charge of Black October, he kept his colleagues in line. They all admired Truman and followed his lead without any questions. But when he left Earth, the money started rolling in. The movie deals, the comics, the toys, the books, it happened all so fast. The money got to them, and their true colors started to show. Commercialism is a big motif throughout the story. The members of Black October care more about their brand deals than they do about saving lives. Kind of like the Seven from The Boys, the members of Black October are only monsters behind closed doors, but the general public still believes them to be real heroes. Well, at least one Slumberg citizen is about to get a very rude awakening. While taking out the trash, Cody finds some blasting caps in the dumpster. Before he can lose any fingers, he runs into Wild Boy. Once a smart and good-looking kid, Wild Boy has followed in the footsteps of his mentor and become an alcoholic and drug addict. He carries around a six-pack so often, you might be mistaken to thinking it's part of the official uniform. He has some missing teeth and long, gangly hair from his drug abuse. His costume is torn to shreds and practically attached to his skin, as he likely hasn't bathed in quite some time. Thinking he's in trouble, Cody tells Wild Boy that he's not the one who threw the blasting caps in the trash. He tells him to cool off, since he knows exactly who put them there. It was none other than Black October's greatest arch-nemesis, Dr. Blasphemy. It was believed that Dr. Blasphemy was dead, but his body was never found. He's been dropping clues that he's going to be making his big return very soon. Wild Boy drunkenly flies into a clothesline and crashes into a fence. Cody goes to check on him, but after all the damage Wild Boy has done to his body with all the drug use, he can barely feel any pain anymore. He hops back on his board and flies away while slamming another beer. On his way back to St. Bingo's, Cody sees Kid Vicious pissing blood at the other end of the alley. All the steroid use turned his kidneys to stones. You might have guessed it by now, but something big is happening near St. Bingo's. And whatever it is, Cody and Father Dunn are caught right in the middle of it. As if things couldn't get any weirder, Luna comes up behind Cody and starts groping him. While fishing the blasting caps out of the garbage, Luna tells Cody to run inside and tell Chippy that Dr. Blasphemy is here. Cody does as he's told and tells Chippy that the rest of the Brat Pack is waiting for him by the incinerator. Before he leaves, Cody tells Chippy that he wants to be a superhero too. Chippy says, if he wants, he can take the mask, the cape, and all the grief that comes with it. The pack meets at the top of the incinerator. Chippy tries telling Wild Boy and Kid Vicious that they need to work together in order to stop Dr. Blasphemy. But like most of their meetings go, Wild Boy and Kid Vicious start beating up Chippy, while Luna gorges herself with potato chips and makes herself vomit. As a byproduct of their mentors being sociopaths, these kids are completely screwed up. These were normal children at one point, kids with dreams and ambitions. Now they're just miniature versions of their mentors. All of their innocence has been drained out of them. While Chippy is getting tortured and Luna sticks her fingers down her throat, Dr. Blasphemy makes his return.
You were so young and unblemished, so Simon pure. Now look what they've done to you. All for the love of a lousy buck.
I want to just take a moment to mention how much I love Dr. Blasphemy's design in this comic. The leather catsuit with the gimp mask and the noose gives him this menacing yet erotic look. The symbols on his chest are called crawlicks. In the comic industry, these symbols are placeholders for curses and swear words. Dr. Blasphemy represents the kind of perverse side of comics. He represents the erotic, raunchy, and violent side, like the stuff you'd see in the 50s before the Comics Code of Authority was put in place, or like the stuff that would come later in the 80s. He tells the Brat Pack if they want to regain the love and respect from the citizens of Slumberg, all they have to do is open the trunk of the Minkmobile, which is the Midnight Mink's car and an analog to the Batmobile. All members of Black October are currently in another city attending a big superhero meeting, so the Brat Pack is all by themselves. Chippy tries to stop them from opening the car, believing this must be some kind of trap. Blinded by their need for admiration and fame, Kid Vicious and Wild Boy throw Chippy in the garbage can. Of course, the car was booby-trapped after all, and almost every member of the Brat Pack is killed in one giant explosion. Somehow Chippy survived, but the explosion has left him horribly disfigured. He collects what's left of his dead colleagues and starts sobbing to himself.
We've got time for one more caller. Let's go out with a bang. Final caller on tonight's listener line, you're on the air.
Oh, well, I was actually the first caller tonight. I asked about the children.
Doc? Hey, we ought to thank you for provoking this spirited discussion. We've had more calls tonight than when True Man disappeared.
I'm very pleased to hear people are becoming more involved in these things. But I need to know how they voted, Neil. What was their final verdict on the children?
I hate to be the one to break the news to you, Doc, but I can predict tomorrow's headlines. City to Brat Pack, drop dead.
Well, that's good then. It's been done. They've been killed.
Killed? You sound confused, Doc. This is just a tasteless joke we played here. Nobody really died.
Yes, they did. They've just been blown into thousands of little pieces behind St. Bingo's church. Isn't that what you wanted?
Wait a second. Wait. Who is this really?
I'm Dr. Blasphemy, and I've come to heal all the diseases that inflict this body politic. It's taken some radical surgery, but I expect the patient to be a complete turnaround by tomorrow night.
The next day, the funeral for the Brat Pack is being held in front of St. Bingo's. Every news station and nearly half the city are there to pay their respects to the fallen sidekicks. Ironic considering how just yesterday there were hundreds of hateful callers into the Neil Dennis show wanting this to happen. This is kind of what happened when Jason Todd died too. Despite the fact that thousands of fans voted for Jason to die, DC still received a lot of pushback for the decision to actually go through with it. It's funny how eager we are to feed into the violence when we think there won't be any repercussions, but as soon as something bad actually happens, everyone plays innocent. This happens a lot more than you probably realize. Back at the funeral, we see the heroes have returned from their meeting to pay respect to their fallen allies. Well, at least that's how they want to look for the cameras. After the service, Father Dunn sits by himself and sobs. This moment is interrupted when Dunn hears something moving in the closet. He becomes livid and demands whoever's hiding in the closet to come out. All 4 members of Black October were hiding out and waiting for Dunn. They corner him and tell him they're going to need new sidekicks. It turns out that Father Dunn is the one who recruits the new sidekicks for Black October. They have some kind of dirt on him. They've been blackmailing him for years. He wants to go to the police, but he knows he'd be dead before he can even try. Cody overhears this conversation from outside of the father's window. Despite the horrors he witnessed in the alleyway, he still wants to be a sidekick. In case you're wondering where the original Chippy ran off to, he's made a new home for himself atop the bell tower of St. Bingo's, like a ghoulish version of Quasimodo. He's snacking on a couple of pigeons when he just happens to see his former mentor prancing on the roof while singing the song Lola. Down inside of the cathedral, Father Dunn steps into the confessional booth where he finds a rather unpleasant surprise waiting for him. The mink's growing impatient. He wants to know where his new Chippy is. Dunn says he's found other candidates for the other vigilantes, but no one for the mink yet. He's probably stalling, since the last boy he gave to the mink was molested and then blew up in a car bomb. Dunn feels ashamed that he ever got involved with Black October. He doesn't want to subject any more kids to these psychopaths, but the mink isn't giving him much of a choice. Luckily for the mink, and very unluckily for Dunn, Cody happens to walk into the confessional booth and reveals to Dunn that he desperately wants to be a sidekick. Dunn tries to warn Cody so he can get away, but unfortunately, it's too late. The mink likes what he sees and decides that he has found his new chippy. Cody is so overjoyed that he practically runs out of the church while the old chippy watches him from the rooftop, like he's plotting something. Something that's likely going to be very bad for Cody. We meet the other new recruits. First up, there's Shannon, a spoiled and stuck-up cheerleader. She's a popular girl with plenty of friends, and she's been selected as the new Luna. Then there's Carlo, a skater and juvenile delinquent who lives in a trailer park. He's the new wild boy. And then there's Bo, the son of a billionaire who was raised by his housemaid Ling, since his father is a workaholic and never home. He's the new Kid Vicious. And of course, there's Cody, who couldn't possibly be happier than he is right now. His dream is finally coming true. All the parents believe their kids have won scholarships to attend Bible camp with Father Dunn, not knowing that all their kids have actually been selected as new recruits for the Brat Pack. Later that night, Cody wakes up to see the Midnight Mink sitting on his bed. He starts asking Cody about his personal life, and once he learns that Cody's a virgin, he starts dancing around the room with excitement. The mink jumps out of the window and tells Cody he'll be seeing him in a few days. The other kids meet their mentors as well. Shannon meets the Moon Mistress coming out of a dark alley, and Carlo meets King Rad after the king knocks him off his skateboard. While there's some definite red flags during these meetings, Shannon and Carlo don't get it too bad. Bo, on the other hand, well, he gets his hand crushed by Judge Jury after he tries stealing some candy bars. Judge Jury, being the most unhinged of all his psychotic brethren, decides to break his new recruit in a little bit. He eases up on Bo a little bit after he sees the books he checked out from the library. The judge thinks that Dunn might have finally found him a worthy sidekick. After his meeting with the Midnight Mink, Cody runs downstairs to tell his parents the good news. But when he opens the door, he sees that both of his parents have been brutally slaughtered. Cody isn't the only one who's an orphan now. Shannon, Carlo, Bo, all of their parents are dead. After all, you can't be a real superhero without a tragic backstory. Who could have done this? All signs point to one person, Dr. Blasphemy. While all this is going on, the heroes meet at King Rat's tower. They realize that since the last Brat Pack died, their profits have nearly quadrupled. Tragedy is good for business, and now that the new Pack's parents are all dead, the heroes will become their legal guardians, meaning they'll collect all their share of the brand deal money until they turn 18. They could care less about their new sidekicks. For them, it's only about the money, and since True Man isn't there to keep them in line anymore, they can do whatever they want now. They figure if the money quadrupled after the last pack died, maybe they can make even more if tragedy strikes again. With nowhere left to go, the kids are sent to live with their new mentors. Cody goes to the home of Malcolm Maplethorpe, a billionaire and publisher of Playjoint magazine, and the secret identity to the Midnight Mink. While the Mink is an openly gay vigilante, Malcolm Maplethorpe is a playboy who lives with hundreds of beautiful women. But behind closed doors, these women work for the Mink as his eyes in the sky, and the Playjoint mansion becomes the Mink hole. And yes, I am 100% serious. That's what they call the Midnight Mink's hideout, the Mink hole. It's also a bit odd that Malcolm Maplethorpe is a clear analog to Hugh Hefner, because earlier in the comic, they actually refer to Hugh Hefner, like by name. So it's a little odd, but it's neither here nor there. Shannon is given instructions to meet with someone named Celine Bino, who happens to be a ragged and grotesque-looking woman, who also happens to be the Moon Mistress. While in costume, the Moon Mistress is a strong and powerful woman with a full body and beautiful features. But out of costume, this is what she really looks like. Her body has been ravaged from countless cosmetic surgeries. She tells Shannon that she's only 27 years old, which is almost certainly a lie. We learn a little bit about the Moon Mistress's origins in the next issue, and if the story she tells is true there, she's likely in her mid to late 40s. But upon first glance, you might think she'd be closer to 70 rather than 40. Carlo moves into King Rad's tower and becomes acquainted with his new mentor and his faithful butler, Fredo. By day, King Rad goes by Peter Panache, president of Panache Industries, where he manufactures weapons he sells to the government, or to various terrorist cells, or to anyone who will pay him, really. He inherited the company from his father. This is where the Tony Stark influence starts to creep in. Another trait King Rad shares with Tony Stark is his alcoholism. Being as generous as he is, King Rad intends to pass this trait onto Carlo. After all, you can't be the king's sidekick if you're afraid to party. While Cody, Shannon, and Carlo try on their new costumes, Bo's at the police station, where he's being accused of murdering his parents. All four of the kids' parents were killed. Bo, however, seems to be the only one who was framed for killing his. Bo, of course, didn't kill his parents. He was with Judge Jury when he heard the news, so it's impossible. But none of the cops believe his story. He's about to be thrown in jail before another officer says that Bo has made bail. Once they're out of the room, the officer, who's actually Judge Jury in disguise, pushes Bo out of the window. Once on the ground, the judge pumps Bo full of steroids and locks him to a pillory. Bo is then subjected to more torture while the judge talks about his plan to wipe all immigrants out of Slumberg and make it into a white haven. He tells Bo that to be a true hero, you need to have perseverance. So he puts Bo through the perseverance test by having him crawl on his stomach through broken glass to get his costume. By the time Bo makes it to the costume, the steroids have started taking their effect. Now that all four kids have their costumes, they go out on their first official mission. Their radar picks up something happening at St. Bingo's, so that's where they're all going. Despite being part of the same team, all the heroes hate each other, and they only choose to work together if under absolute necessity. They have a rule that whoever gets to the mission site first gets to be one to deal with it, and since Chippy and the Mink get to the cathedral first, the other three break off and let them deal with it. Whatever was getting picked up on the radar was coming from the bell tower of St. Bingo's. The Mink figures the scanner was just picking up some pigeons and decides to leave it alone. If he would have stayed, he would have discovered his old sidekick still alive in the bell tower. Chippy might not be seeing his old mentor today, but he does get a visit from Dr. Blasphemy.
One of the children lives. Sound the alarm. I'm not going to inquire how you survived the car bomb. That way you won't have to lie to me now, will you? You know me. I'm Dr. Blasphemy, and I don't believe in lies. I live only for the truth, a truth so naked, hypnotic, and corrosive that when you finally get to the bottom, it's stranger than fiction.
A few days later, back inside St. Bingo's, we can see Father Dunn is perhaps overindulging a bit on the church wine, and maybe a little whiskey as well, or whatever he can get his hands on. Since he gave Cody up to the Mink, he's turned his back on God and turned his lips towards the bottle. The Mink decides to pay Father Dunn a visit to show Cody off in his new outfit, basically rubbing it in his face that he's stolen Cody away from him. Dunn tells the Mink that someone who's caused so much death shouldn't be allowed in the house of the Lord. The Mink reminds him that he has blood at his own fingertips, perhaps hinting at what kind of dirt Black October had on Dunn. While the Mink's back is turned, the father takes out a submachine gun from his robe and shoots the Mink in the back. Surprisingly, the bullets have almost no effect on him. Dunn thinks he must be a demon. He tries to get Cody to stay with him, but he goes with his mentor. Cody wants to know how the Mink could have possibly survived that. He says he'll tell him later, but now it's time for the duo to go out on their first patrol. They find a group of rednecks burning down an AIDS crisis center. The Mink's body is still recovering from the bullet wounds, so he sends Chippy out to get their attention first. Cody tries to reason with the men, but things turn bad quickly. Before they can hurt Cody, the Mink shatters a Molotov one of the men was holding with his remote dart. The Mink forces the other guy to watch as his friend burns to death. Cody stands in complete shock and terror. He runs back to the Minkmobile, where he thinks he sees something, or someone, staring at him from the roof. Before he can get a good look, whatever it was is gone. When the Mink's done making examples out of the rednecks, Cody tells him he doesn't think he wants to be Chippy anymore. The Mink decides to tell Cody the story of when he first met True Man. Malcolm always knew he was gay, but he wouldn't end up fully coming out of the closet until he was 19. That also happened to be around the time when he first met him. The man's name was Wesley Winton, and Malcolm was head over heels for him. Wesley was quite fond of Malcolm too, so he decided to share his true identity with him. Wesley Winton was True Man. He took Malcolm under his wing and taught him acrobatics, and he was the one who came up with the Midnight Mink moniker. They became a team, and for a while, things were good. But one day, Malcolm got hurt, and True Man had to save his life. This is when True Man discovered that Malcolm was HIV positive. So to save Malcolm's life yet again, True Man transfused some of his blood into Malcolm's body. As a result, Malcolm became nearly immortal. This is how he survived Dunn's sneak attack in the church. The Mink says that he can give this immortality to Cody if he stays with him. This would turn Cody from a vigilante to a real-life superhero, which was always his lifelong dream. We can also come to the conclusion that this is how the last Chippy survived the car bomb. While Cody struggles to keep his sanity, we see Luna and the Moon Mistress are at a football game. When a fight breaks out in the stands, the Moon Mistress sends Luna down to handle it. She tries to distract the men so the Moon Mistress can sneak up behind them, but once the men start to get touchy-feely, The Moon Mistress is nowhere to be found. Things start to get really, really bad. They try to rape her, and they almost do it before the Moon Mistress jumps down and cuts the back of the man's knees open. She castrates the man with her sword and stuffs his severed chippies into her trophy bag. After the game, Luna breaks down inside the Moonlander. As if getting used as bait wasn't bad enough, she had witnessed firsthand a grown man getting castrated. Well, technically, not fully castrated. Moon Mistress was feeling generous today and decided to leave the man one. While Luna and the Mistress fly back to the moon base, King Rad takes Wild Boy on his first mission. Terrorists have taken over the library, and they have hostages. Only one thing I hate more than terrorists. What's that, King? Hostages. King Rad wants to just fire a single rocket into the library and call it a day. But Carlo begs him to let him try and save at least a few. The king agrees, but tells Carlo he only has 30 seconds. After that, he's firing his rocket into the library, whether Carlo is inside or not. Carlo shows off an impressive level of acrobatics, as he's able to get inside the library without getting shot. He's even able to grab a child hostage before the missile hits the library. The child thanks Wild Boy for saving his life. Well, at least he thinks he's been saved. To his credit, Carlo tried to do the right thing. He was almost a hero. Almost. Half of the kid's body was obliterated from the missile. Body horror is a big staple in pretty much all of Veitch's work, but for Brat Pack, he really held nothing back. This comic has some of the most gruesome images Veitch has ever drawn. Lastly, of course, is Judge Jury and Kid Vicious. The judge doesn't believe Bo is ready for a real mission yet, so he decides that he will have one last test. The judge brings Bo to a landfill where migrants are looking for heavy metals that they can sell for money. The judge drops a gold bar into the landfill and tells the migrants that whoever gets the gold first will get to keep it. Within minutes, the migrants swarm around to find the gold bar. Bo is given one simple task: go get the judge's gold back. Not wanting to have to go through the perseverance test again, Bo has no choice but to jump down and get the gold. Bo fights tooth and nail, and by the end he succeeds. But before he can hand the gold back to the judge, Bo finds his old maid Ling lying half dead in the water. After Bo's parents were killed, Ling couldn't find any work. She was desperate and started coming to the landfill. Bo wants to save her, but when the judge finds out that she used to be his maid, he makes Bo leave her to die. If Bo wants to be Kid Vicious, he couldn't possibly associate himself with a migrant. The judge won't have it. After their long and very traumatizing first days out on patrol, the heroes and their sidekick return home. Cody accepts the Mink's offer and gets the blood transfusion. There's no turning back now, even if he wanted to. Cody steps outside to grab some air while Malcolm's asleep. The old chippy comes out from the shadows and is now face to face with his replacement. Strangely, the old chippy starts tearing himself apart in front of Cody. By the time he's done, there's nothing left. He does, however, leave Cody with a parting gift: his old mask. At the cathedral before the bombing, Chippy told Cody that if he wanted it all, he could have it: costume, mask, and the trauma. The next day, the Brat Pack have their first autograph signing at a local comic book shop. Hundreds of adoring fans from all over the city come to meet the new Sidekick group. Things get cut short when a crazed fan rushes to the table and impales Chippy in the chest with a crowbar. It's likely another cheeky little nod to Jason Todd. The perpetrator was the guy who was burning down the AIDS center just the day before. Bo shoots the man to death while Cody pulls the crowbar out of his chest. The rest of the pack now know that Cody has a healing factor. They don't know how he got it, but they intend to find out.
Hi everyone, Stanley Burr here with the WSLM Eye on the Sky weather update. And if you've been waiting for your moolah from heaven, then get ready because today Slumberg is hitting the jackpot. We're talking major storm system here, perhaps the biggest on record, and we're not alone. Reports from around the globe describe freakish and extreme weather conditions everywhere. And let me tell you, a lot of helpless people right now are asking the same question. True man, where are you when we need you? Some of the statistics are horrifying. 250,000 souls swept away in a typhoon in Bangladesh. Japanese coastal cities under 10 feet of water. A midsummer blizzard recording 40 below zero temperatures across Europe. All this and much, much more in just the last 24 hours. We are told the situation is still developing and that scientists are at a loss to explain what it all means, or even what to expect before it's over. This is your Eye on the Sky weatherman, Stanley Burr. I'll be back with updates on the quarter hour until then.
Something's happening to the Earth. Something very bad. It feels like the end of the world. Many people think it is. Father Dunn doesn't intend to stay around long enough to find out. Before Dunn can jump from the bell tower, Cody comes to pay him one final visit. It's been some time since they've seen each other. Cody's been chippy for a while now, and he's become more unhinged. Cody tells him that he isn't going to take the easy way out until he helps him understand what he's become. He tells Dunn about the blood transfusion. He begs Cody to run away and start a new life somewhere far away from Slumberg. Cody breaks the father's whiskey bottle over his head. While Cody does hate his life, he's also not a coward. He's never going to run away. The rest of the pack wait downstairs for Cody. They've essentially picking up where the last Brat Pack left off, completely and utterly broken. When Cody does eventually make it downstairs, the other three sidekicks start beating him up. They want to know where he got his powers, and they're going to find out one way or the other.
Ah, a frank and honest discussion of the issues. That's what I like to hear, especially when it opens the door to those nagging questions that have never quite been laid to rest. You'll find out tonight when we play Slumberg's favorite game, Truth or Consequences.
Dr. Blasphemy has returned. He tells the pack that their masters have been lying to them, and if they want to learn the truth, all they have to do is open the coffin. This is exactly how it went with the last pack. Chippy even tries to reason with them again, but of course they don't listen. That is until Cody finds something very familiar underneath the coffin. It's a blasting cap. The same blasting cap that Cody found in the garbage when the last Brat Pack died. Cody didn't realize at the time, but these blasting caps are produced by Panache Industries, King Rad's company. They all now know the truth. Dr. Blasphemy didn't kill the Brat Pack. He was trying to warn them. It was their partners. It was Black October. They killed their parents, then they adopt them, thus becoming their legal guardians. And since all of the Brat Pack members are still under 18 years old, all of the royalty money goes to their mentors. And then right before they turn 18, they kill them off so they don't have to share the profits. They've been doing this for years. They find ambitious and young children, orphan them, adopt them, get their money's worth, and then kill them off. The pack may have outsmarted their mentors this time. There's no doubt that they will try and kill them again. To protect the other sidekicks, Cody strains his blood into a chalice, and the other three drink his blood. For the first time throughout this entire comic, the pack finally embrace one another as a real team. Just when things are starting to look like they're going to be okay, a missile falls from the ceiling and the whole cathedral goes up in flames. The heroes had a backup plan. They were listening in the whole time. They go down and check to see if any of their former sidekicks survived. It seems even with the superpower blood coursing through their veins, none of the kids did make it. While they look through the rubble, King Rad tries to get his butler Fredo on the radio, but for some strange reason, he isn't responding. Suddenly, the Mink hears a noise coming from the belfry. When they go up to investigate, they find Dr. Blasphemy's lifeless body dangling from the bell tower. They finally unmask their longtime nemesis to find that Father Dunn is the one under the mask. But if Dunn is Dr. Blasphemy, where's the rest of the outfit? They only found the mask. Suddenly, everything made of metal starts flying around the bell tower. Cars, trucks, garbage cans. It's like the cathedral has become some kind of magnet. This isn't a normal storm. This is something big, something powerful, and something angry. We feel it too, tingling in our veins, alive in the blood we share. True man's come home, and he is the storm. True man returns to Earth, and it turns out he was watching his former colleagues the whole time, and he isn't very happy. The Mink and the Moon Princess try to beg for forgiveness, while King Rad desperately tries to get Fredo on the line. True Man traps the vigilantes within the bell and burns them all to death, while Dr. Blasphemy, who's revealed to have been King Rad's butler Fredo the whole time, hears everything through the radio. This is where our story ends. Before we can even attempt to analyze Brat Pack, we're going to need to have a little history lesson.
Comic books are an important contributing factor in many cases of juvenile delinquency.
This is Dr. Frederick Wertham, an author and psychiatrist who, in the year 1954, released a book titled Seduction of the Innocent, in which Wertham states that comic books are the single greatest threat to the American youth. Dr. Wertham believed comics turned otherwise well-behaved children into delinquents. He also believed that publishers were putting subliminal messages in their comics so they can promote dangerous ideologies to children, such as homosexuality, misandry, drug use, and fascism. Seduction of the Innocent was massively successful when it came out. It was a bestseller, and more importantly to Dr. Wertham, it did its job in convincing parents that comic books were rotting their kids' brains and turning them into criminals. Shortly after Seduction of the Innocent was released, there was a Senate hearing in which the topic of discussion was violence in comic books. Wertham was one of the speakers at the hearing, where he repeated many of the same ideas he states in Seduction of the Innocent. This was a major blow to the comic industry. Parents didn't allow their kids to read them anymore, and newsstands refused to sell them. Wertham is often credited with ending the golden age of comics, and damn near killing off the medium as a whole before the comic boom of the 80s and 90s. Dr. Wertham is easily one of the most influential names in modern psychology. He's also a big fucking liar. Okay, maybe I'm being just a tad bit overdramatic, but it is a fact that since its release, Seduction of the Innocent has garnered a lot of criticism within the psychology community. A lot of Wertham's research was biased. He also failed to mention a few very important things into his research notes. For example, Wertham used adolescents who had previous histories of juvenile behavior as his primary sample group, but he never states this in the book. Subject statements were sometimes altered, combined, or just straight up made up. Another example was when Wertham was trying to make the argument that Batman comics promote homosexual behavior because of the relationship between Batman and Robin. He combined the statements of two patients who had apparently started feeling homosexual urges after reading a Batman comic. But Wertham, of course, chose to omit the fact that these two test subjects had been in a homosexual relationship with each other years prior to either of them having ever read any Batman comics. Even though Wertham lied, it unfortunately didn't matter. The damage was done. And as a result of the Senate hearings, the Comic Code of Authority was put in place, so comic publishers can censor themselves rather than having the government do it. Wertham's name became infamous in the comic industry, and this is where the Brat Pack comes back in. Brat Pack is a clear mockery of Wertham and Seduction of the Innocent. The Midnight Mink and Chippy is a clear allegory for Batman and Robin, who, Wertham claimed, promoted homosexuality and pedophilia. The Mink is a sexual sadist who clearly just uses Chippy to satisfy his own sick sexual desires. The Moon Mistress is a clear spoof of Wonder Woman, who, Wertham claimed, was made to poison the minds of young girls and emasculate young boys. He believed she promoted ideas of misandry and sodomy. So of course, Moon Mistress is a hypersexual deviant who emasculates men and takes their manhood as trophies. Judge Jury is the most extreme version of Captain America and a blatant racist. Wertham claimed that many red, white, and blue clad heroes, such as Captain America and Superman, were in fact un-American and promoted ideas of fascism and xenophobia, which is interesting considering that Superman is a literal alien, so not sure how you can get xenophobia from that, but of course, when Rick Veitch wrote Brat Pack, he made Judge Jury into an overt fascist who dreams of a white America. King Rad is an alcoholic and drug-using delinquent. He's the archetype that Wertham warned the masses comics were turning their children into. Each hero pokes fun at something Wertham claims in Seduction of the Innocent. Veitch is showing us how utterly ridiculous these ideas really are. So that begs the question, if Veitch is making fun of Wertham in Brat Pack, then why did he dedicate the book to him? Well, as surprising as it may seem, Veitch actually did believe that Wertham kinda had a point. Not with the whole comics will turn your kids into criminals thing, but it is true a lot of comics, especially back in those days, did rely heavily on shock value. They were kind of vulgar, there was a lot of blood and gore, and they definitely had an adult edge to them. It's a pretty well documented fact that comics which featured scantily clad women on the cover sold better than those that didn't. And let's remember, this is a medium that, for much of its history, was targeted for kids. Veitch loved comics, but he also understood that we may not have always been reading them for the right reasons. As I mentioned earlier, we have to be honest with ourselves and admit that we enjoy seeing our heroes in misery, even if those heroes are kids. While still working under DC, Veitch started to get frustrated with the higher-ups of these companies, as they felt they cared more about how to profit off the comics through movie and toy deals, rather than making sure the comics they were publishing were actually good. Veitch wanted to take these frustrations and explore them in a comic, one that he would produce himself, away from all the mainstream publishers. Veitch decided to explore these ideas through the theme of child abuse, which was something Veitch was very familiar with. This laid the groundwork for what would eventually become Brat Pack. My first visits to Marvel, DC, and Gold Key were eye-opening. As a kid, I'd fallen for the fantasy for their Manhattan offices, where swinging centers were fun-loving and creative people. The reality, that they were gray places reeking of quiet despair and deep cynicism. The people pulling the oars of these companies were the hidebound survivors of years of office politics played amidst the never-ending booms and busts of comics. This generation that, having endured public and political vilification behind Dr. Frederick Wertham's Seduction of the Innocent, was quick to enact a self-censorship scheme. I believe they sold out comics because they understood quite well that some of Wertham's criticism of their business practices actually carried weight. These early observations laid the foundation for Brat Pack. I'd spent a lifetime loving comics, but on penetrating its inner sanctum, I found a cynical, exploitative element that repelled me. I wasn't sure how or where I would use those feelings. I begun playing around the back of my imagination for a creative way to get these powerful polarities down on paper. Comics publishers have been selling Freudian fantasies to children since the beginning, so it wasn't all that difficult to turn the sex, violence, and satire knobs all the way up. But I think what gives the satire weight is that on another, more personal level, I was probing my own checkered history. I'd grown up too fast, a throwaway kid with a head full of ideas in a poor hick town. Theme-wise, Brat Pack became very much about toxic parenting, of which I'd seen plenty. Veitch used Brat Pack as both a means to analyze the relationship between the reader and the comic, and as a vessel in which he can confront some of the many hardships he faced within his own life. He saw that something was corrupting the industry that he loved, and he couldn't stand by and stay silent about it. He saw how money and office politics were infecting the comic world and turning it into a bastardization of its former self. He refused to follow the trend that so many other writers and artists were at the time and solved his passion for quick money. Veitch wasn't in it for movie deals or for toys. He got into comics because he loved telling stories. And the story he tells in Brat Pack is a cautionary one. This is what happens when passion and creativity is crushed by greed and conformity. Cody represents every young writer or artist whose dreams have been crushed by the harsh reality of the comic industry. If you made it this far into the video, then please consider leaving a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe if you liked it, because there's going to be plenty more like this to come. The roles of Neil Dennis and Stanley Burr were voiced by my friends Mullet Man Comics and The Masked Man. I'm going to link both their channels below in case you aren't subscribed to them already. They both make really awesome content. I'd like to once again thank Aura for sponsoring this video. And don't forget to check out the link below to stop data brokers from selling your data. If you want to support me, then please consider checking out the Patreon. If you become a member, you gain access to our exclusive channel Discord, as well as getting your name at the end of every video. You also get all my videos early and uncensored. And yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.